Today I am here to talk about 12 books that I have pulled off of my shelves that I think would be helpful or useful or just kind of what we need right now. Welcome to this house of books. My name is Ashley, and on this channel I love to talk about things that I am reading and everything books. Let's just start with it's a trying time right now. I am not liking it, and it is for sure stressing me out. I am trying to find a balance of burn it all down and also trying to respect and save my own mental health. So, I don't know how I'm doing on it, but this is where we are. I have put together a list of 12 books that I think would be important to read at this time. Some of them are harder than others. I kind of go from hardest, and I mean hardest meaning like maybe the most infuriating, educational, difficult, emotional books to read, but I do end on kind of a good note. So now, before we get started, I just want to do a little bit of kind of housekeeping. I read for fun. I am in no shape or form an expert on really anything. My highest level of education is some college, meaning like I don't even think like a full year of college. I was an average C student in high school, and that was on good days. I have really taken these past few years to read and to educate myself as I am educating my kids. We homeschool. So I have taken it upon myself to take in information and listen to others and their stories and learn from it. So I hope that these books in some way inspire you. They have inspired me. That is why I picked them off of my shelf for this video. I have a lot more on my shelves that are in the same kind of level of inspiration of these, but I just haven't read them yet. Yeah, I have a couple on this list that are mild fantasy, but not full fantasy. Listen, you pick up any kind of big fantasy book, it's gonna be dealing with like destroying a government system that is oppressive. So take your pick on any fantasy book and go with it. Any way you read it, it will be inspirational. Also, you cannot see my shirt. Let me see if I can show you. All right, so it says a well-read woman is a dangerous creature. So this is a new t-shirt that I just got, and I think that it is fitting for today and the books that we are going to be talking about. So the first book that I have is my only nonfiction. I have some like historical fiction books on here, but this one is the only true nonfiction book. I actually just finished reading it yesterday, but it is so inspirational that I am going to scream it from the rooftops that I think everybody should read it. And that is The Small and the Mighty by Sharon McMahon. So this is 12 unsung Americans who changed the course of history, from the founding to the civil rights movement. Absolutely amazing. I think my one complaint is it does kind of jump around a little bit, but it actually, she's able to tie in these stories together. It was inspirational and so well done how she names these people that we should have learned about, at least know their names from American history. You know, the big famous historical figures. But then kind of, but off on the side, this person was actually doing much more. and this is their story and how it kind of interconnects with these other stories. It was so well done. I am definitely putting this onto the reading list for high school for my oldest. When he gets to American history, we are for sure going to read this, and I can't wait. My next, it has been around for a while. It has been quite a few years since I have read it. I think with current news events, it needs to be read by more people. This is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This is what happens when fascist government takes over other countries and what happens to the people there. Everybody should read it. Not only do you learn a lot about history that is definitely not taught in American history, it brings in so much complexity to humans and really like what was happening to those people in France once certain groups took over. Yes. My next is based on a true story. This is The Last Green Valley by Mark Sullivan. So, what happens to a family that is caught between two enemies? This is their story of trying to escape and having to run towards another enemy that eventually they also have to escape from. All right, I had to pause, kids, and I had a phone call. So on the back, it says that it illuminates the extraordinary power of love, faith, and one family's incredible will to survive and see their dreams realized. To end up in this beautiful green valley. It does actually have the pictures of the family that this story is based on, and I think just brings light to what happened historically and what we do not want to happen again. My next is Homegoing by Ya Jessie. I just read this in November, I think it was. This little book packs a punch, heads up, but you are following a family whose lineage splits into two, and one side of that family stays in Africa and one is sold into slavery. And so you follow, it's like 300 years of following this lineage to see their stories. I think that there are some huge, powerful, important messages and history to be had in this book. And I am going to continue screaming about this book from the rooftops. I think it's so important to see what colonization does and the outcomes of the actual people because of that. All right, my next book. It is a newer book as well that I just read. I don't know when I read it. Sometime in the fall. It's actually going to be read in one of my in-person book clubs for February. I probably won't reread it, but I will skim through it again. But this is The Lion Women of Tehran by Marjan Kamali. If you want to see the outcome of Iran and how they were in the 1950s before everything started changing and women have now lost all rights and more, I highly recommend picking this one up. I think that it brings light to what that country was, and how they have been so oppressive and people have no voice to be able to do anything about it. So this, you're following two friends as they kind of go very different routes but still come back and forth with each other throughout years. I thought that this one had pictures in it, but maybe I'm thinking of something else. If you are not sure of the history of all of this, which I myself have barely scratched the surface of, go look up pictures and see what women were dressing like and how they were going to school and educating themselves in the 1950s and 60s. It is shocking. The next book is I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys. She is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. I have read multiple books by her now, and she somehow finds these stories that are not in the front of textbooks and brings them to light. So this is set in 1989 in Romania as the country falls from communism. You're following a 17-year-old boy as he is going through all of the emotions and trying to figure out where he fits in the fall of communism. This is such a powerful book. I will also be reading this one with my son as he reaches high school age. It is YA, which I think all of her books are, and I think that there's such a powerful message to be had in this. My next book is, if you want to read a book that encompasses female rage that turns a little fantastical, yeah, I think that's how I want to introduce it. This is When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. So this starts in the 1950s. You are following a young girl at that time and her family, including her mother and father and aunt. And then something happens and hundreds of thousands of women across the world, but especially the United States, turn into dragons. They just get so sick and tired of the patriarchy that they literally turn into dragons and burn their houses down in the process. But then, what happens afterwards? What happens to this little girl and how this has changed her family dynamic forever? And what does the government do? Do they actually own up to their problems and mistakes? Or do they turn a blind eye and tell everybody not to look up into the skies? I bet you can figure out which one the government picks. Absolutely wonderful. I would definitely like to reread this sometime. I think that there are so many important messages to be had. Now, the last little stack of books here is turning more towards cozy. Cozy fantasy is quickly becoming one of my favorite genres. I love the cozy vibes, but also the fantasy vibes, but also the little bit of like political intrigue in them. So my first book to talk about is The House on the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Absolutely one of my favorite authors. I have his new book coming out beginning of February. I have it pre-ordered. If you want cozy, if you want found family, if you want to see how somebody in the bureaucratic government, very rule follower person changes his ways and starts to think of these magical children as actual people, that they also have rights and that being oppressive to them is not okay, definitely pick this one up. The second book, Somewhere Beyond the Sea, I just did recently read that one last year. It was 4.5 stars for me. It does deal more with all of it deals with the political aspects. I think it's more hands-on, face-to-face political stuff going on. Still, so amazing, so wonderful. I just listened in on hearing TJ Klune talk. There's a author interview thing through one of my public libraries, and so I was able to listen in and hearing him talk about it and his characters. And there's a third book coming out, definitely one to pick up and to inspire hopefully lots of people to use their voices for people that have differences, but shouldn't be shut down and shunned and sheltered away because the government says so. All right, my next, it's another cozy one. This is The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong. You're following an immigrant fortune teller who only tells small fortunes. She doesn't want the responsibility of telling people big fortunes, which, yeah, I can see. She is very reserved because she is an immigrant and there's a lot of prejudice towards her. There is found family where she stumbles across these two guys who are on a mission to find a missing girl. They also stumble upon a cat. There are some political things in this, but it's pretty low stakes. So I liked that kind of mix of fantasy and found family with political things going on. It just really, really worked in this book. I really highly recommend. I highly recommend all of these books. I keep saying I recommend it. I recommend it. All right, my next two books I am going to talk about together because they're both really short and it's just a little duology. But I have The Psalm for the Wild-Built and The Prayer for the Crown-Shy by Becky Chambers. If you want to read a book about robots in this case, or it could turn into any group that has been wrongly mistreated, who stand up for their rights, who leave the situation, and the government lets them and changes their ways so that they become better civilizations. This is the book for you. You are following a tea monk, and they travel around and serve tea to people. They are a little lost and just don't quite know where to go from there. And they stumble across a robot who wants to ask humans, is there anything that you need? There are so many amazing philosophical questions to be had in these little short books. It's cozy, but also hopeful that it's never too late to change as a civilization, to be more caring towards others, to be more loving towards others, to not be so harmful towards Earth. These tiny little books pack a punch, but in the best of ways. My very last book is definitely one that I think is probably the least political out of all of these books. It definitely leans more on the cozy and found family kind of aspect, but that is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. If you want to follow an orc who has lived on bloodshed and battles, but is kind of tired of it now, and she wants to hang up her sword and open a coffee shop in a place that doesn't have coffee, like people don't know what coffee is, and have the experiences of that. Have some of the prejudice that goes into, what do you mean this big brutal creature wants to open a cozy coffee shop? And all of the found family that happens along the way. This is the book for you. The last thing I'm going to say about this book, I'm going to read the front. It's sweet, beautiful, and most of all, kind. Which I think we all just kind of need. All right, let me see if I can pick up all of these books. I might have to... let's see if I can do it without rearranging. All right. Dun, 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 dun. I got them all in! Look at that. Very cool. Like I said, I am not an expert on anything. These are not the most political books out there. There are lots and lots of posts and videos and everything sharing much more political books than this. But if you want just a nice little place to start, some of these might be good options for you. Anyone that says that reading is not political is wrong. I think just about every book on my shelf has some kind of political aspect to it, be it women's rights or fighting against a tyrannical government. They're all political. And we have a voice, whether it be small or big, and it's our time to use that voice. I know that this video is much heavier than any of my other videos here on this channel. I have other videos ready to go. I have 2 other videos filmed, but I just felt like it wasn't the time this past week to share them. I felt really inclined that I needed to pause those videos. They are still coming. I will still share them, but I needed to share these books first. I made a post and shared it a couple days ago. I have been really active over on Instagram and sharing information. I do have it, so you have to ask to follow me, But I am there, and I am always up for good conversation, or if you just need anything from funny and lighthearted posts and stories to more intense and serious stories. On that note, curl up with your favorite drink, take a deep breath, and let's do this.